So welcome everyone. We're ready to start. Dive in on our theme. I don't have a good joke to crack, to get you warmed up. So I'm just appreciating that you're all warmed up. So Andy and I didn't consult at all on what we would talk about. So his worship introduced a lot of the ideas that I'm going to touch on here to begin with. But anyway, these wonderful words that are our theme, that are so in harmony with our Remembrance Day celebration, are the words of the Lord who hours later was going to do just this, lay down his life for his friends. And of course we know there was no greater love than that the Lord showed for us, his friends. And as Andy pointed out in the reading, or as the reading pointed out, the Lord goes on to say, I no longer call you servants, but I call you friends, because I've shared with you what the divine purpose is. And so when he says, introduces those words about greater love has no one than this, what does he say? He says, this is my commandment, that you love one another as I have loved you. Greater love has no one than this. So he's commanding them to love as he loves, and he's laying down his life. And so that's exactly what he's asking us to do, is to lay down our lives for our friends. Well, in this phrase, which is our theme here, this sentence, there's a couple of things that I want to focus in on. One is life. Andy talked a little about that. And the laying down. What is the laying down? And who are the friends in a spiritual idea that the Lord wants us to have as our purpose, lay down our lives for? Well, we'll start with life. And what is the life that someone with greater love lays down? What is the life? Is it just the physical life, the natural life? That's certainly, we respond immediately to that as being the greatest love, someone willing to put down their own life. And, we have examples, so many examples in human history of this. People do this. All these figures that I managed to grab online are men. And I guess that's because men are the soldiers, or historically have been, and, the people in public life. But of course there are countless women who have given their lives as well. But the list could go on and on and on of people laying down their natural lives for their friends. But we know that the word is really about our spirits, and so the Lord clearly wants us to understand how we need to, this is something that all of us do every day, need to do every day, to lay down something of our spiritual life for the sake of our friends. So I want to look back from the heavenly doctrine, the perspective of the heavenly doctrine, on what life is, what our life is. And the writings for the New Church, countless times, again and again, on practically every page, remind us that our life really is our love. It is what we love. The life, love is the very life of a human being, because without love there is absolutely no life. For from love, everyone has the heat and the fire of their life. And Andy read from this passage here this morning, the work Angelic Wisdom concerning the divine love and wisdom begins on this note. Love is a person's life. And as Andy read, love is a human being's very life, ipsa vita, life itself. Not only the general life of their whole body and the general life of all their thoughts, but also the life of every single particle of these things, of the body and of the mind. And of course, the context there is talking about the divine love and how the divine life is love, and he shares that life with us. Well, I'm really into fundamentals, really knowing the basic structure of the world of life, of the spiritual world, of the natural world, of the mind. That's sort of what I've been about in my teaching career. So I want to take you right back to remind you of what the Heavenly Doctrine teaches about the mind. The mind, the writings say, consists of will and understanding, those two basic faculties that stem from God, because he is love and he is wisdom. And so the will is what registers and receives his love, and the understanding is what gives form to that in thoughts and ideas. So love is called the esse, that Latin word meaning being. And the understanding is called the existere, the coming into existence. And so, love is really the very being of our life, the emotional end in view that we're going for, the source of all energy to do anything, to live, and the source of all purpose. And the understanding is what expresses that love, that emotional energy, and gives form to it and brings it to our consciousness and articulates, as it were, what we love. So it really is, the note that Divine Love and Wisdom begins with is that love is our very life. It's really all about love. And yet that love absolutely requires understanding and wisdom. So the love is why we live. And I think Andy actually even used these words. The understanding is how we live. The truth enables us to know what we love and to give direction to that love and to articulate it. So And what do we know about the will? How does that love work in us? How does it affect us? And we're told that the will actually has levels that's useful to distinguish. So there's the love itself, and that's really at the core, and yet that love that is our life manifests itself in our life in affections. And those affections find expression in delights and also in undelights. This is likened to, love is likened to the fountain, and the affections to streams that go forth from that fountain. And that analogy actually doesn't tell us what the delights would be. But anyway, the best definition for affections, I find, is in this work, Arcana Celestia 3938. It says, affection is nothing else than love varied according to circumstances and according to the states and the changes of these states. So what are affections? Well, it's how our love shows itself in our experience. So, how does my love feel about that coffee? Someone walks in the room. How do I respond to that? Well, there's an affection that comes into play there. Did it make me angry? Did it make me pleased? So affection really is the way love shows itself in all the different circumstances that we encounter. But the interesting thing is, delights are really where we experience what we love, and undelights, of course. And here's what the writings say about delight. They say affection displays itself only through some delight, consciously felt, and the pleasures of reasoning about that or thinking about that. And the same section says delights and satisfactions form a person's life. What is life without delight and satisfaction? It is not something alive, but something devoid of life. Diminish delight and satisfaction, and you will grow cold and become listless. Take them away, and you will expire and die. Now it is from delights, the delights of one's affections, and from the satisfactions of one's perceptions and thoughts, that vital heat comes. So isn't that interesting? The writings actually say that we are not directly aware of what we love. We don't sense love. And we don't even sense affections. Even though we talk about, oh, I have an affection for this, an affection for that. Those affections really themselves are not known, the writings say, except through delight. Delight is what makes them knowable. We often don't reflect on what it is that we delight in, because delight, the writings say, carries us along like a ship on a stream, or a current on the ocean. We're not aware of it because we're so engaged in it. But if we want to know what we love, reflect on what it is that brings delight. Now, it's true that every moment we're not feeling delight. That word conjures up, that sensation that's enlivening. But every second we are anticipating what is to come. We're going for something, and it's the hope of that and the expectation of that that really keeps us alive. If we didn't have that, and when we don't have that, we become listless. Our spirits flag. And so it really is delights. Well, where are we going with this? What is the life that we are to lay down? Well, it's the life of love. It's the life of those affectional moments that we experience, and really it's the life of what delights us, what floats our boat, what keeps us going. That's what we have to lay down. So this is and what are the implications of knowing this? I don't know. By the way, I didn't say it, but I really want you to interrupt me, because I'll just go on talking and talking. Feel free to butt in. Say, wait a minute, or hey, I have a thought on that. Any reflection so far? Yeah.
Yes, well, could you sort of clarify laying down our delights?
Mm-hmm. Well, I was hoping you would clarify. What is that?
Does it mean you have to be willing to give up the things you love to benefit somebody else?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Put their delights before your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And is that easy to do?
Not always.
Not always. Right. And the more strong the delights are that we've invested in something, the more difficult that becomes.
It depends how their delights align to your own delights. If their delights are aligned to yours, then it's easy to...
Yeah, that's right.
If they're not, then that's harder.
Yeah, great point. Yeah, Sarah?
I think parenting perhaps is the biggest example that stands out in my life, going from being able to do whatever you want to not being able to do what you want because somebody else is more needy than you. It comes by stages. The baby at first takes, sleeps during the day a little bit, and so you have a few minutes of freedom, but that evaporates, especially when they're teens. And the practice of just putting your children's needs before your own is very profound. I think in my life, perhaps one of the most profound things.
And so you're laying down your life, each
much.
and every
all the things you
minute.
love doing yourself, because your children, their needs are more immediate, and you need to take care of them.
Yeah, and our daily lives, in a way, revolve around putting the use first, right? Okay, this has to be done next. This has to be done next. Yeah, I want to do this, but no, I got to do this. So there's a sort of a laying down that we become very used to, in a way, and more or less subservient to. How good are we at doing that? What marriage is all about, Barry says. Yeah. Absolutely. But okay, what is the love or the delights that we are to lay down? I mean, what is love? There's all sorts of loves, right? Is it our love for the Lord that we're supposed to lay down? Our delight in worship, our delight in the... Is it our love for our automobile and the joy that it gives us to hop into our Ferrari and whatever? Yeah. So this is where I'm going to take you back to the fundamentals. What is love, and what are the levels of love that we're considering here? So the basic design, and you guys have seen this before. I probably put this very slides up in front of you. I tend to go back to the same old things again and again. So yeah, the design into which we were created was that the Lord shares with us 4 basic loves. A love for the Lord, the love for the highest things, the good and the true, that we can recognize and honor. A love for our fellow human beings, and a love for the world and resources, and a love for the self. Right? So these are spiritual loves flowing in through heaven from the Lord all the time. And these are natural loves that are also flowing in. Now flowing in with a little twist from hell. The word true Christian religion, in describing this design, talks about these spiritual loves as love of heaven, and kind of lumps them together and identifies them with a love of uses. So this is the inversion, a picture of the inversion of the design. So the Lord doesn't compel us to put things in the order that He created them. He wants us to put them in that order ourselves. He wants us to choose to do that. And so it's possible for us to place these in the wrong, place a wrong priority on these loves. And when we do that, we pervert the design. So yeah, the order is that love of the Lord and love of the neighbor should be the head, and love of the world and the self should be the lower parts, the servants. Ruling loves, ruling delights, and these should be the serving loves and the serving delights. And when we're able to do that, why then our sense of self really revolves around that heavenly part of us. And that's called the heavenly proprium, the heavenly sense of self and ownership. And that's the goal, is for us to come to that place. And of course, if we twist the order of things, then we pervert the very order of our humanity, and those love of self and love of the world become the ruling love and delights, and those become the serving love and delights, and so love of self and love of the world become the head and the upper self, and the serving become like the feet and the legs, and we become monstrous. And in the other world, we actually look that way in the light of heaven. And yeah, then these become our corrupt proprium, our corrupt sense of self revolves around them. Yeah, basic doctrine here. Yeah, we're actually told in the other world, evil spirits in the light of heaven are upside down because their feet is where love of God and love of the neighbor are, and their head is down below. So yeah, by birth, we come into hereditary tendencies to love ourselves and love of the world. And that's the problem. And so those loves need to die, in a sense. Die, right? Whatever that means. We have to lay down those things for our friends. And our friends really are up there. Well, I want to go back for a minute and say, wait, love of self and love of the world, do they really have to die? Well, no. Right? They really, when they're in their proper order, those loves are by creation good. And they're there to serve. The angels love the world. They love their self. But they love them as servants to the higher. But anyway, back to friends. Laying down our life for our friends. Yeah. In the spiritual idea, what are friends? Are they just everybody? Just people? I don't know. Where do you think the writings go with this?
Did they say that friends really are the goodness in others that we can see, or their potential for goodness? Proper friends.
Yes. Yeah, so we're called really by the writings to reflect on who we are loving and who we are serving. And is it just people? Well, yeah, we care about people, but what we really care about is the good and the true in them, because that's really where they find blessing, is in that. So, yeah, basic doctrine here. So people who are in the good of loving the Lord and loving their neighbor, that's our friend. And it's really the good and the true in them that we're meant to love. And so when the writings talk about love for the neighbor, they talk about loving the good and the true. So, for example, from the New Jerusalem and its Heavenly Doctrine, from the section on loving the neighbor. Does someone want to read? Can I get someone to read for me? Fritz, thank you.
It is plain from what has now been said that in the universal sense, good is the neighbor, because a person is a neighbor according to the quality of the good that is with them from the Lord. And because good is the neighbor, so is love, for all good is of love. Thus every person is a neighbor according to the quality of the love which they receive from the Lord.
Yeah, so good is the neighbor. And could we say good is the friend? Because a person is a friend according to the quality of the good that's in them from the Lord. Actually, the writings do differentiate between friendship and love of the neighbor. And they say friendship is something lower than love for the neighbor. But I think in the higher sense, we could think of friend as being that, the good and the true. Although the writings do say everyone may indeed be friendly to another, but still they should be most friendly to what is good. They often make that statement about the truth, too. We should really be a friend to the truth if we want to be a friend. And as all of you know, the writings talk about the neighbor, not just in terms of, well, they say we are neighbor to ourselves, and then there are individuals, that we're neighbor to. But then there are levels, really, of awareness of the good. And when we aspire to serving the good of the higher levels, we really come into wisdom and are much more profound in the impact that we have. And so, we have these levels of the neighbor that I know you're familiar with. There's the self, the individual, the societies and groups, country, church, the Lord's kingdom, and the Lord himself. And in each one of these levels, the good and the true is more profound and universal. So, laying down our life for ourselves at times, that's possible, right? For others in our life, individuals, for societies or groups, for our country, for the church, for the principles of gathering and serving a love of spiritual life. And then the Lord's kingdom is even larger than the Lord himself. So laying down our life for our friends, ascends. So I wanted to sort of switch gears here and look at what we actually love in other people, on a day-to-day basis. Very often, I think we're caring for people on the level of, civil life, even their bodily life. Children, for example, we're always concerned about, how they're doing and whether they've got what they need, and a lot of that relates to pretty low-level stuff. Anyway, I wanted to look at which love we're fostering in others. I mean, are we fostering that love of self, the good of their self, their person? Are we fostering their worldly well-being? Are we fostering their love for other people? That love for the neighbor. Are we fostering their love for the good and the true, for the Lord, for God? Because, of course, when we're loving the self and the world, we are loving their temporal well-being, their being in time. And when we foster these deeper things, we're fostering something that will be with them eternally. Yes, Fritz?
Yeah. I think the writings teach that we should learn to discern what is good in the other. Is it something good that we can help? But in practical situation, it's not always apparent what someone is up to, and are we doing something good by helping them, or should we inquire or make our decision depend on what we see or what we learn? That's not always very practical. So at times you just need to decide on the spot, like, how am I going to respond to this particular situation I find myself in?
Mm-hmm.
It can be challenging, I think, to make that distinction.
Yes. Yeah, it really can. It takes a lot of reflection. And sometimes what we actually do won't identify what our goal is. In other words, if we give food to a hungry person, are we serving their natural self or are we serving their spiritual self? We could be doing both, right? Mm-hmm. It really comes down to our intention and maybe our follow through. There are perhaps implications there. But yeah, the writings ask us to love with discrimination, so that we're going for those higher things and we're not getting in the way of the higher things in what we actually do. So if we serve someone who's really unworthy, we're not really promoting their spiritual good or the good of the common good. Yeah. So yeah, we're told that. I've gotten a lot of resistance to that from New Church people sometimes. They think, no, we should just help people. We shouldn't be too concerned about anyway, but it does take reflection.
But it also says you shouldn't judge a person's internal. We are not allowed to.
That's true. There, yeah.
So that also gives us a bit of an issue on that.
Yeah, yeah.
You can only judge what people do, not their internal. Is what I thought we were told.
Yeah, although we can judge, we can make a judgment. We just can't make a judgment about their eternal life.
Okay, yeah.
In other words, we can say, I'm not going to help you, for these reasons, but I'm not going to judge you as being a bad person either. I'm looking at what I can see.
Yeah. It's just a caution.
Yes.
I was thinking
Peter.
of the situation where I'm trying to send a message to a bereaved family.
Mm.
I can put into words what I think is helpful to them. I can't be sure how they will receive them.
Mm.
Some people say, oh well, it's the intention that counts, but there's a bit more to it than that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a difficult situation.
Mm-hmm.
You can't spend the rest of your life doing it, because it's got to be something tomorrow, as it were. You've got to send your message quickly, and yet it's hard to compose it.
Yeah, for sure it is hard to put it in a wise way that can be received by others. Yeah, that's a real challenge. Anyway, I was intrigued by this treatment in the work True Christian Religion, where it describes these four basic loves. It lumps the top two together: love of heaven, love of the world, and love of self. This is Jonathan Rose's translation, which I thought was made it more accessible, although it's not the language that you're always familiar with. So this is from his translation, True Christianity. I've named it TCR because I think that I like that title better. There are three universal categories of love: love for heaven, love for the world, and love for ourselves. But here's the point it makes. Charity has something in common with each of these loves, with all three. And it goes on here. Love for heaven means love for the Lord and also love for the neighbor. And it goes on to describe those in common terms. But here's how it describes love for the world. Someone want to read? Anybody like to exercise their voice and have someone else talking aside from me? Karen, thank you.
Reading Love of the World?
Yes.
Love of the world is not only love for wealth and possessions, but also love for all the things that the world provides that please our physical senses. Beauty pleases our eye, harmony pleases our ear, fragrances please our nose, excellent food pleases our palate, soft touches please our skin. It also includes beautiful clothes, spacious accommodations, and social groups to belong to, all the pleasures that we get from these and many other things.
Yeah, that's quite a description, isn't it, of love for the world. I would think some of those things would be pertain to love of self too, just the very sensations that it describes. But I guess it's thinking of them more broadly as the opportunities for those things that are in the world. And then love for ourselves. I'll read this as nice and short. Love for ourselves is not only a love for respect, glory, fame, and status, but also a love for seeking and getting high positions and becoming a leader. Okay, charity has something in common with each of these. Common with glory, fame, status. Anyway, it goes on to say this. Charity has something in common with each of these categories of love because charity is by definition a love for usefulness of all kinds. Charity wants to do what is good for our neighbor, and goodness is the same as usefulness. Each of the categories of love just mentioned have usefulness as their goal. Love for heaven has the goal of being useful in spiritual ways. Love for the world has the goal of being useful in natural ways, which could also be called forms of civil service. And love for ourselves has the goal of being useful in physical ways, which could also be labeled benefits at home for ourselves and our loved ones. More in traditional language there, it has this goal being useful in physical, corporeal, actually is the Latin idea there, bodily ways. And loved ones would be one's own. So isn't that interesting? What's physical about benefits at home for ourselves and our loved ones? I guess it's just sort of describing the lowest level of things, but there's something very present and physical about ourself and our own, right? Anyway, I want to put the things that were mentioned earlier just sort of in a list here to reflect on. So the writings are saying it's legitimate to love and promote these things in others when it's useful. So love of the world, wealth and possessions, all the things that the world provides that please our physical senses, beauty, harmony, fragrances, excellent food, soft touches, beautiful clothes, spacious accommodations, social groups to belong to, and all the pleasures that we get from these and many other things. So all this stuff that belongs to loving the world, we can promote in others. And we do this all the time in our children, right? We want them to have good clothes so that they can fit in and be liked by others. We want them to be comfortable and to learn about good food and have good food and have all the things that they need. We want them to belong to social groups, so we get them involved in stuff. And all that stuff is important to our civil life. And without that civil life, we can't really be useful. And love of self. This one's really interesting. Respect, glory, fame, status, seeking and getting high positions, becoming a leader. Actually, Jonathan has translated that becoming a leader, which is interesting because the Latin is sort of literally love of ruling over others, which doesn't sound so good. But I think what that really means is the desire to have impact, to have influence with others. That's an important thing, isn't it? To be able to be heard when we talk and to have what we have to offer acknowledged and engaged with by others. So becoming a leader, being able to have leadership positions in the things that we do. But all these things, there's a way in which these things can be useful. And again, going back to children, we want them to have a healthy sense of self and to be able to offer what they offer, to develop their talents so that they can be recognized for them and have a status of sort on the basis of them. So why am I getting into this? Well, these are the loves that we work for and promote in others, along with those higher loves. And they're also the loves that we lay down our life for and our own self for. And yet, we also need to reflect carefully on what we're going for in supporting ourselves and others in these areas. Because the purpose can't be just these things. The purpose really has to be the spiritual life that we want to nurture and lead to. Yeah, Fritz?
Just one question. This love of ruling over others, does the Latin imply anything like whether it should be benign or the opposite? Or from ruling I get more a negative connotation, and a leader can also be someone who's beneficial and trying to do the best for his subjects?
Well, the context here is how these things can be in harmony with charity, right? And so I think Jonathan has really captured that well in saying becoming a leader. But the writings elsewhere talk about love of dominion from a love of self and love of dominion from a love of use. And
Well, I was thinking, I think there's a phrase, I think it's in the writing, influence is according to reception. And if the person receiving the respect, the glory, the fame, is focused on themselves, then that's not good.
Right.
It can be good, there can be good things, but it depends on the person receiving all these things. Their own motivations also affect how they respond and their influence with all these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if they're self-centered, that's not good.
Right. Yep.
I mean, you talk about being leaders, but obviously some people measure themselves by how many followers they have. And also influencers is a thing now, isn't it? So it obviously is ambivalent, because someone who is an influence for positive good is performing a good service, but someone who's influencer who's using it to peddle some scheme that they're making money from or some bad idea is obviously is not doing it.
Yeah.
It's interesting that there's not a mention of the other obsession, which is the obsession of health and well-being. And some people spend a lot of their lives on their health and well-being through physical activity, through all these other things where they're trying to prolong their natural life or make their natural life more calm or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Because that is a big part of people's lives these days.
Yeah,
Good or not so good.
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah. I guess people didn't jog very much in Swedenborg's day. Do that kind of thing. Yes, Kathy.
Yeah, that brings to mind a time in my life when I had a granddaughter in paediatric intensive care, and there was this lovely couple. They had twins, and I don't know what had happened to one of the twins, but he was he wasn't doing very well. And I remember this couple sitting in their family room and eating all of this fruit and saying, we have to look after ourselves. We have to keep healthy. We can't afford to be sick. We won't be allowed to visit. And I admired them hugely, and that was an act of great love, I felt. Whereas they could have done what so many of us parents do in those situations, and you go and grab something, just something quick energy, something probably isn't going to do you much good, but it's sort of, you're seeking some sort of comfort, and you tend to go and buy chocolate bars and things like that, and things you shouldn't be eating, whereas they were focusing on the best way they could help both children, by keeping as healthy as they could, and that made such an impact on them.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and isn't that a wonderful, isn't this a wonderful set of grounding teachings that we have? You know, it shows us what we really should care most about, but it also authorizes us to seek those things in a way that's functional, you know, by paying attention to ourself and the world, and the self and the world and our families, our children, as a means whereby we can most effectively affect the common good, you know, and help the common good. So to beat yourself up for, you know, caring about these things would be really unproductive, unless they're becoming your whole life. And then that's when we really struggle to put them in the right place.
I think one of the most prominent examples of this is when you're flying an airplane. Oxygen mask, you first, so you can help everyone around you who is struggling. You know, it's so simple. You first, to become a mean to help someone else.
Yeah. Right.
There have been various theories about management, about what motivates a worker in the workforce. And one of the writers called Maslow put forward this idea of a hierarchy of needs. So at the bottom, people's focus would be on shelter, having enough food and income to have a sustainable life. And then you've got various levels of this. So then you move on to, you know, satisfaction of working through other people and enjoying their company and achieving things together. Then at the higher levels, it's to do with self-fulfillment, having a purpose, and realizing perhaps leadership or some satisfaction in making change and making a difference to the world. So I was quite interested in, if you like, the hierarchy of needs compared to the way this is set out on the screen. Because the hierarchy of needs is very different. And when you're managing, you have to try and work out what motivates people that are working for you.
Yeah, in order to achieve that, the highest usefulness. Yeah, that Maslow's really good stuff. Any other thoughts on this?
I suppose I was thinking if those basics aren't met, so going to hierarchy, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but also this love of self, if those haven't been supported, it's so much harder for that person to then love those higher things and to be able to give. And that's the thing that saddens me, actually, that there's so many people that have been deprived of these basics of their own functioning body and being loved and supported. Then they're missing out on being able to do anything more and further.
Oh, and that is so tricky, isn't it? Because how do you get them to that higher place by filling these needs? You know, because very often we're not close enough to nurture them along, so all they're doing is taking. You know, and they're not really
sad to see that
benefiting.
In an adult state when we're very happy to support children in that position, but when there's an adult, you're expecting something more and different, and they're not. They're in a childlike state because they haven't actually had.
Yeah. Wow. It is not simple, is it? Yeah. Well, back to children though. How do you, you're focusing so much on giving them a foundation and establishing them in an education and developing their self. And how do you prioritize the higher things that you want them to, where you want them to end up? How do you nurture that love of the neighbor, and the love of the good and the true, the love of the Lord? I don't know. We've got some parents here. How do you think about that? How do you achieve that balance?
One thing that you might do is when you see the child performing a kind action, you can comment on it and say, "Oh, you really cheered up your sister when you gave her a hug or when you said that," so that they become able to reflect themselves on those good things that they've had an effect on other people.
Yeah. So really signaling.
Positive, helping them signal when those things happen, because they might not stop and reflect that they just did that wonderful thing. They just did it because they were moved, because children can be moved by innocence, but they don't know it. So reinforce the good. Yes.
Yeah.
We have a thing, Toby. It's one of our values. Everybody comes into school and says, "Why do you have Toby? Why is that boy's name on it?" It's about thinking of others before yourself. And it's amazing how much the children respond to that. But they link it very much with "do unto others as you would be done by."
Yeah.
And I have never put that in their heads, but when we talk about it, that is the thing that comes out that they think about. I would like to be treated well, so I'm going to try and treat other people well, and then they think about this in terms of how do I respond to another child without thinking of myself. It's very hard for children, but they manage.
And it's a high goal.
It is.
It's what we're all aiming to do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
some of them are better at it than others.
So as teachers, you guys are aware of the importance of signaling that, and identifying that, so that children make that connection. Do you spend time trying to get your faculty to do that, or you just expect them to do that? I mean, do you nurture that kind of...
In the summer, actually, we had a meeting with the staff and the governors about our values and how we were going to try. I mean, you and I have had this discussion about kindness within the sort of governing body, and together we talked about this. In fact, we changed one of our values from something into kindness, because we felt that it was really important that we were trying to show that value to each other. So yes, we do it, not just for the children, but we do it amongst the staff. If we don't set that example to each other, and then how do we expect the children to show kindness?
Yeah, Catherine?
I did it. Well, I particularly focused in on the sibling relationship, and every time there was a falling out in that, I never assumed that my children would automatically care for each other. I kind of assumed that it would be the opposite, and that I had to build their relationship. And so I was very vigilant and monitored every time they fell out. I brought them together and we discussed the love that existed invisibly, and I said it's little strings that connect you to each other, and if you do these behaviours, you're cutting these beautiful ties that are so important for the rest of it, so, and it might have been a bit too much for small children to comprehend, but I really didn't allow them to hate each other or for any anger to last very long. So I felt responsible for building their love, and in doing that, I think I was hoping that I was then building in them the ability to, if they could love each other successfully and overcome their differences and learn to manage that, then they would then be able to go out into the world and replicate that without people outside of the family. So I felt the foundation had to be me building it, and that it was my responsibility, not theirs. I had to make sure they loved each other.
Yeah. Ula talked about signaling when they're doing something good, or experiencing something good. That was a nice thing you did for your brother, or your sister.
Yes, and I didn't do that, but I did.
Well, I'm hearing you.
But I once occasionally would say to them how much that I knew the other child loved them. Even though the appearances might be otherwise, I would say, your brother really loves you. And that's but I wasn't very good at spotting moments, and congratulating them.
I heard you say something earlier that I think is very important, because we want to signal the positive states and good times, but we also want to signal when they're compromising those, right? We want to help them learn to lay down their life for their friends. We'd say recognize evil. We want to spot when they are being harmful and selfish, so that they can be aware of how that's standing in the way of the higher goods, the love of the neighbor, the love of the Lord.
There are a lot of lovely children's stories that highlight this,
Mm-hmm.
which then kind of teaches them the principles away from themselves, like the selfish crocodile and things like that. And I remember you get really good discussions with children sometimes through stories.
Yes, yeah,
and
yeah.
that can be a sort of lighter way of teaching.
Yeah. There's some great stories that way. Yeah. No fighting, no biting. So, I don't know if you know that book. Great. So yeah, the first of charity is to shun evils as sins, and the second is to do good. So we want to signal both those things. When evil's happening, selfishness is happening, and where the charity is happening.
I think having lived a long life and grown up in the years after the Second World War ended, I think people's attitudes then were quite different to now.
Mm-hmm.
For example, people's thought, make do and mend. We repair what we've got, and we won't go out and buy something new just for the sake of throwing something away. Or we'll save money and we'll build enough money in order to buy the house or whatever we want, and we won't rely on HP or loans, for example. So I think the mentality was very different. And nowadays I'm very struck by how materialistic people are, and also in social media, celebrity culture, and these things are being pushed on people a lot, I think, in the current environment.
Yeah. Well, let's move on. The last little section that I wanted to focus on was the laying down of one's life. Greater love has no one than to lay down one's life of love and delights for the good and the true. So that laying down, is that easy to do? Laying down what we want and what we hope for and what we're working for in all those moments of the day, when we have to prioritize somebody else over ourselves or some other good. Is that an easy thing to do? I mean, a lot of the time it's not, right? Because we get used to doing that. We discipline ourselves to do that. But of course, then come the hard times, when the hells are inflaming our desire for our own well-being, our own good, and really testing our love of spiritual life, and that's when it's hard. And those times do come and will come. And we could spend a lot of time on that, but I just want to end on the note of the Lord himself saying, greater love has no one than this, and him demonstrating that love. And that's reflective of the fact that really the Lord is the one in us that has the power to do that. It really is only the Lord's presence with us that enables us to make that decision and to follow through with it and to resist the things that challenge that decision to lay down our life. The Lord, when he was in the world, in the Gospel of John, said this. This is the challenge that he put before us. He who loves his life will lose it, and he who hates his life in this world will keep it for eternal life. And he comes back to that theme in the other Gospels as well. He says, if anyone comes to me and does not hate his father and mother, wife and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and his own life also, he cannot be my disciple. He who does not bear his cross and come after me cannot be my disciple. Gospel of Matthew, similarly, he who loves father and mother more than me is not worthy of me. Who loves son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. He who does not take up his cross and follow me is not worthy of me. He who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it. So this is the bottom line that we face, is that it has to be the most important thing to us to be willing to sacrifice what we want for the sake of the higher good. But anyway, I'm going to skip ahead a little here. These are those statements on the Lord's part. What is it to deny ourselves and to hate our own life and to lose our life and to lay it down? Well, I think you know. I think you know what that's like. He's not talking literally. He's talking about what we love most. Do we have it in us to do these things, to deny ourselves the pleasures that are before us, or hate the things of the world, of worldly life that really float our boat, delight us? Let the things that we love and treasure, I've got to let that one go. No, I can't do it. Oh, I have to do this. And laying down the life of our personal enjoyments. I don't know about you, but when the chips are really down, I don't find it in myself to do these things. I just don't have the power to do that unless I let the Lord in. Unless I let that higher power.
It seems very strong to say hate your children, your wife and stuff. That means, strictly speaking, you want to kill them. Because hate is wanting to kill, so that seems a bit puzzling.
What do you think the Lord wanted his disciples to be thinking there? Do you think he really wanted them to hate?
No, but why did he say it?
I think in the internal sense it relates to your affections.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those things really close to you that you value and want to protect and promote. Mother and father are kind of a metaphor for that, really.
Yes, clearly. It's those things that we are so identified with and so care about that are selfish and standing in the way, that we have to be willing to let go. Anyway.
I think that what we're actually being asked to do is not to just trade or void, deny them and that's it, but to replace them.
Uh-huh.
And if you can replace them with something that gives you a different kind of delight,
Mm-hmm.
then the step is a lot gentler.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it has to be made with a bit of grit.
Mm-hmm.
But easier.
Yep. Good point. Anyway, I don't want to end without getting to my last slide here. This is not the last one quite, but the Lord, when he was in the world, said, my Father loves me because I lay down my life that I may take it again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of myself. I have power to lay it down, and I have power to take it again. This command I received from my Father. The Lord really is the only one who has the power to lay down life and to raise it back again. And I think ultimately, we need to realize that in our battles, it really is the Lord who fights, and we need to believe and invite him in to do that. And that's a very positive message, because if we don't believe that there's someone who can do that when we can't do it, then we're sunk. But if we invite that Lord in to do that, we can all do it. We all have the power from him to do it. And it's the Lord alone who fights in people who are in the combats of temptation and who overcomes. A person from their own power can effect nothing at all against evil or infernal spirits, for they are so connected with the hells that if one were overcome, another would rush in, and so on forever. So would it be with a person unless the Lord alone sustained the combats of temptation in them. And so we must have faith that salvation is from the Lord alone. That's the main thing of faith in temptation. He who believes that he can resist on his own strength yields, but he who believes that the Lord alone resists in temptations conquers, for he is in the truth and attributes the merit to the Lord and perceives that he is saved by the Lord alone. So the Lord says, I have the power to lay it down and the power to take it again. Truly, his is the kingdom that we strive for. His is the power to attain it, and his is the glory of the victory. So thank you for listening, everyone.
Thank you.